what I want to talk about is creating a variation off an existing listing. And luckily, Amazon makes this fairly simple to work with as long as you have an existing listing you're working on. And as long as that original listing happens to be a parent ASIN or there's a parent-child variation relationship. So if you go to inventory, then click on add a product, it'll take you to the page where you normally list products one at a time. And then over here you have add a variation using the variation wizard. And we have a video tutorial on this as well in the Matrix, but I'm going to go through just following the steps of how to create it. So if you want to choose add to or update an existing variation family. And in this step is you're going to find the child or the parent ASIN that you want to add to. So let's say there's a product. I'm just going to go to Amazon and search for men's shoes. Yep. So if there's a color or a size that doesn't exist on the variation page and you happen to come across it and it doesn't exist, you can create the listing. Now you do have to take your own images unless you have permission from the owners of the product to use those images, or if you have, because you don't want to take just from Google or from somebody's website, because then you can run into intellectual property rights complaints. So you can't just copy the images unless you ask permission to use it, or you just take your own pictures. So let's just take this one for example. Let's say you happen to have a different color or different size of this. You would take either the parent ASIN or one of the child ASIN variations, which can be either found in the URL or on the bottom of the page in the product descriptions. You can paste that in here, and then it's going to pop up with that variation family. It'll take a second to populate. And now we're looking at pretty much all the variations, and I maybe picked a bad example, but it's showing up at the very least everything is here. The next step we want to do is go to the bottom left here, click add variation, and then we're going to put in our information. Now, since there's no ASIN yet, it doesn't exist, there's not going to be a field here, Amazon will generate the ASIN themselves once you list it. So in this field is where you put your SKU. So it's going to be your unique identifier, and it can be whatever you want it to be. And for those that are using the ASIN as the SKU, obviously you can't do that in this case because it doesn't exist yet, unless you want to add it afterwards into your inventory a second time. You can just make up your own SKU for this listing. Pretty much just copy the title and just replace whatever information is different. So let's say you're adding a size 8.5. For whatever reason that doesn't exist for this color. Copy this information, paste it in the field, change this to an 8. Choose the product ID type, which in most cases you're going to use the UPC. Put in your UPC, whatever it may be. Oops, making up numbers. Again, copy the way that they format the size and color variations, so it looks normal, and the product page is not kind of, it'll look weird if you just do 8.5 because it has to be specific to what kind of size it is, and if it's a wide size or if it's if it's slightly different, you want to just copy from the same variation you're making it off of. Choose the color map in whichever color this is. This is brown, so I'm going to look for brown. And then if it's a specific type of brown, again, just copy the variation color. If it's a new color, you can take it from the actual box or from the product you have and use that specific color variation. So if it's light brown or some specific color, I can copy the right thing. Choose the size as accurate as possible. So 8.5 is probably towards the medium size. It's going to be new. I'm not sure. This may be a typo. I've never actually seen OEM before. Maybe someone correct me, but last time I looked at this, this just said new. This is new here. I'm not exactly sure what OEM is actually. Maybe they just updated this because this used to have just the used and collectible and new. Anyway, you want to choose new anyway because that's what you're selling. And then in these fields, is where you put your quantity and price. Since we're going to be doing FBA, you're going to leave the quantity blank or make it 0. Take your price. Let's go with this price you're going to sell it for. Hit save. I'm not going to go through with this because this is fake and this UPC is not real. But what will happen is after you hit save, you'll be able to generate a template. And I hope I have one. Yeah, I have one in the past. Once you generate the template, it'll show up over here. You can download this, and this will just be the flat file for the category to upload new products or to create listings on Amazon. So I don't even have to open to look at this necessarily unless you want to add more information. And since you're piggybacking off existing listings, it's going to be taking all the relevant data from the parent listing. So the bullet points, the description, Anything in the back end is all going to be there from this listing. So you'll see here, if I go to the template page, it's going to be filled out with the parent, an existing ASIN, and the ASIN that we want to create, or the UPC we want to create. I didn't actually generate this right now, so this is an older example. We have here the description, the size, everything that we filled out is in green here, the variation type, and it filled in all the relevant data to create the listing. From this step, I'm not going to save this. I don't need those files. You'll go to add products via upload. So we're going to go back to the top. Add products via upload. Now you can check your file. I usually just skip that step when I'm doing variations because I trust that Amazon made it correctly. You can check your file to see if there's any errors. But normally I just skip that, and then I'll choose the inventory files for non-media categories. In this case, because this is the clothing and shoes variation, this is the most accurate. Choose the file, keep the Excel template the way it is because it's using their Amazon's template, upload it, and then they'll come back with any errors or anything that may have been wrong with it, and they'll say total number of records submitted, number of records successful, and you can download the processing report. And that'll be the steps to create a new variation off an existing listing. Overall, it's a pretty simple process. Sometimes you run into errors with Seller Central and the uploads, in which case, if there are cases like that, you can create a case with Amazon and say, hey, here's the file I uploaded, it gave me these errors. I got this from the variation wizard. Can you help fix this, or can you do this or that? Normally, if there are errors, it'll pinpoint on the error file exactly what the error was, but sometimes Amazon's codes and their descriptions aren't the most thorough and the most understandable. So there's a lot of times that it's just easier to have Amazon explain what to change and what not to do. So yeah, that's pretty much these steps to creating a variation for an existing listing. It can be very beneficial if you come across items that just aren't listed and you know the other variations exist, and then you'll own the buy box on those. So yeah, any questions on that?
Is it possible to take a certain product and make a variation, 2-pack, 3-pack?
So the question is it possible to take a variation of a product that has a 2-pack or 3-pack and make other numbered pack varieties? So the tricky part about doing that is that when you have those multi-packs, you can only have one UPC tied to that product, generally speaking, unless you get GS1 UPCs registered for those other variations, or you have your own UPCs that you somehow purchased elsewhere to register against those products. Now, you want to be using GS1 UPCs. You want it to be legitimate. Or if you have the G10 exemption, which Melissa, Jaquel spoke about earlier today, but Melissa can go more detail on that through support. You can create the listings that way. But normally, if you just use the UPC, it'll be likely attached to one of those other multi-packs or the single pack for that product, and you won't be able to create the variation or off that existing listing that way, because you need to have a product ID code in order to create any listing, and you can't use the same product ID for multiple products. So you'd have to either get a UPC to work with that or apply for the G10 exception and then create the variations with that. But I don't remember if the G10 exception will be accepted through the variation wizard. So you may have to work through Seller Central and just maybe just mimic the way that they upload the file. Because the way that this wizard works is just making it easier than just filling out a flat file manually. But as we looked at the download file, it's just you download the file for that category. So you download the shoes flat file or the whatever category whatever you're working with. And fill out basically as much as you can of what is bolded, because the templates give you what is necessary and what's optional. And since you're creating a parent-child variation, you need to take an existing parent or an existing child and fill out the file in that format. So if you want to take an example, if you go back to that page, I mean, you wouldn't be able to get this unless you've done this before. But if you use the variation wizard at one point in time and you download an existing file, you can at the very least see which columns need to be filled out and just mimic that. So if you have here, let's open this again. So everything that needs to be filled out is generated from the variation wizard. So if you have your own file and your own thing you're working on, you just kind of copy the same data. So parent doesn't get a UPC or product ID type, but the children do. and just anything that's been filled out is what's relevant and necessary to add to it. And you'd probably do a size variation or a color/size variation for a multi-pack, and you'd name that variation just the other like 3-pack and so on. That's usually how they make those variations. It's just a size or color variation, and they just rename the color or size what that is. And Jaquel, are there any questions in the Facebook group?
No, you have no question.
Cool, because this is a relatively short topic. It's a quick tutorial, and there's a better, more easily, more step-by-step version in the matrix that we have to go through. It's recorded, so you can watch it over and over. But yeah, they make it pretty easy to work with. The only issue I've seen in the past is that sometimes Amazon updates their flat file forms, and they have newer versions of them, and that aren't always downloadable for some reason. For instance, like last month or a month and a half ago, I was trying to upload a file, and I got it directly from Amazon, and it had a whole bunch of errors in it because it was the older version of the file, and they said, oh, you need to get the newer file. Here are the steps to find the newer file, and it was a whole convoluted step-by-step to get it, when the one that I got was from their help pages anyway. So there may be some lag until they update with all their right files, in which case you want to reach out to seller support so they can just either provide you the direction to get it or give you specifically the file, and you just have to copy the information into that file, making sure they match up correctly. Because if the column headers don't map into Amazon's database because they have a newer version and there's an extra column somewhere, or there's one less column, it's going to shift a lot of the data, and it's not going to really work out correctly.